What's up, guys? Brady here, coming at you with an album ranking for August Burns Red in preparation for their upcoming album, Season of Surrender, dropping in just a couple days. Even though August Burns Red wasn't like a key band as far as me getting into metal, with the likes of Trivium and Killswitch Engage and some of their peers, they're a band that I've really grown to respect. For one, I think they've actually carved out a pretty unique space for just themselves in the metalcore scene, just being kind of like that bridge between 2000s melodic metalcore and progressive metalcore. On paper, their sound is right up my alley because those are like my two favorite subgenres of metalcore. And they're also just really, really consistent, definitely more consistent than some of their peers. They've maintained the heaviness and the hostility. They never chased radio hits. And they just have a very unique, one-of-a-kind sound to me. They're that rare band that's right in the middle of bands like As I Lay Dying and Unearth on one side, and then Periphery, Between the Buried and Me, After the Burial on the other side. As far as exclusions for this ranking, there's really just one. I'm not going to be counting the Christmas album, just because I don't know, I don't think it's quite fair to rank that among all of these other records. But let's get right into it with the album that I have to put at the bottom, which is going to be Guardians from 2020. Even though this record is at the bottom, I don't think it's a bad record. To me, this is just clearly the band's most non-essential and skippable record. If you're going to get into August Burns Red's discography, this is the easiest one to just not bother with. It does have its moments, like I think Bones is a solid track. I think Bloodletter brings a lot of that meanness that this album might lack in other points. Lighthouse is awesome. It sees Jake actually incorporate some of his own clean vocals, which is something that's really rare for the band. But the majority of this album, except for those few highlights, just kind of feels like the band's sound by the numbers. Not necessarily bad, but again, just a little bit skippable. Tracks like the open of the narrative and Defender, they have some cool moments, like the narrative in particular. I like the build-up it has, but aside from like specific moments, they just don't really feel like they're doing much new things compared to what they had already done up to this point. Because keep in mind, this is one of the more recent albums, and this was actually the first record that I was a fan from the band. So I remember listening to it when it came out and just being a little bit underwhelmed by it. And then obviously I re-listened to some of the band's past works, and it was obvious to me that this was somewhat of a non-essential record. Top three tracks though, I'll give to Bloodletter, Lighthouse, and Paramount. In a very, very similar vein, I'm going to give the number 8 spot to Leveler, the band's fourth album. Again, not a bad record by any means, but there are some moments on here that just feel a little bit underwhelming, a little bit lukewarm compared to past material and future material. You hear it right away on the opener, Empire, which the track is fine. But that's the thing, it's just fine. It's not bursting the gates open like other August Burns Red's album openers do. And on this track, you even have like those whoa vocals that I just think are a little corny. And yeah, Cutting the Ties, Salt and Light, Poor Millionaire, Boys of Fall. These are all songs that like maybe have a couple of cool like individual moments, but as overall units, they just feel a little bit vanilla for the band. But once again, this record still has its moments. Like I think the track, pardon my pronunciation, Corp DM. I'm not sure if I said that right, but that's probably my favorite track on here. I love just the very prominent melodic influence on here. There's really cool like twangy melodies that come in later in the song. Internal Canon has a tension to it, and also like almost this tropical leaning bridge section that still sounds rather unique for the band, even though they've done a lot of stuff like that since. You got the track like 40 Nights, which is a really good execution of the band still pulling off their signature sound. And also the closing title track, I think, ends the album off on a good note. So like there's definitely still a good amount of fertile material on here that I do think I would recommend listening to. But as a unit, the record is just noticeably a little more spotty, and there's just a few moments that just feel too much like filler for this to be one of the band's best albums for me. Top three tracks, Corp DM, Divisions, and 40 Nights. Next up is Messengers. Now we're getting to the albums that I really, really do enjoy and that I will have significantly less criticisms for. I think the only reason Messengers is a little bit lower on here, and I know this is a very beloved album in the fan base, but to me, especially coming after the debut Thrillseeker, it is noticeably a little bit more simplified. It takes a lot more from just straightforward melodic metalcore than it does from the progressive side of August Burns Red music, which is maybe my preferred aspect of them. It does still have its proggy moments, like the 11th Hour is a great instance of that. And outside of the progginess, there is still some experimentation on here. Like Black Sheep has a very like blatant black metal influence right away, and then you get like these dreary, clean guitar melodies in the bridge, which at the time was something a little bit different for them. And even though this album dials down the progginess slightly, it still shines and it still excels in its melodic metalcore formula. At the beginning of the record, Truth of a Liar and Up Against the Ropes are great instances of that. The band really cranks up the emotion on a track like Composure, which I know is one of the band's most well-known songs. Vital Signs is really cool. It's a really dynamic song with some tempo changes thrown in there to spice things up. I really like the lyrics and the riffing in the track An American Dream. And yeah, this is still a really good album. Definitely a noticeable step up from the two records that I placed below it. But to me, it's just a little bit less experimental than some of the band's future works and even the debut. So it's got to be at the spot. But I still like the record overall. Top three tracks: Composure, Vital Signs, and Black Sheep. At the number 6 spot, just barely edging out Messengers. I think I'm even giving these two albums the same score, is the debut Thrill Seeker. The main reason I'm putting Thrill Seeker above Messengers is because I think it's so impressive for this band's debut album to be this good and to sound this good. If anybody has seen some of my previous rankings, you'll know that debut albums often like place near or even at the bottom most of the time. Often because of things like unrefined production or just not having a clear stylistic goal. But I can't say that at all about this record. Production-wise, I actually think it strikes the perfect balance between that rawness and that polish. And stylistically, the band does sound very, very confident in this kind of hybrid, progressive, melodic metalcore style. I think it's no wonder that the band would pursue full-on progressive metalcore on their future releases, just because it's clear that that was kind of the style that they were aiming for first, before they streamlined it slightly for their following few records. Great instance of that is the track A Shot Below the Belt. Maybe the most progressive type song on here. It's got one of those melodic bridge sections, which become a staple in the band's future sound. The opener, Your Little Suburbia is in Ruins, has really blatant extreme metal influence I think is awesome. I love the dissonance in the track Too Late for Roses. That's another really great one. And there's other tracks on here that do maybe lean slightly towards that straight up melodic metalcore sound, but they're still great. Speech Impediment being a great instance of that. A Wish Full of Dreams is a song that's really melancholic and conveys a lot of emotion. I love the grooves in the track Consumer, and even the instrumental track on your Eve of the End has some really cool moments and some cool grooves. I just wish it wasn't an instrumental. And I think, again, maybe the only reason that this record isn't higher up is because the songs overall do feel like they might blend together slightly when you're listening in the full album context. And future records from this band just kind of do a better job of splitting things up and having more unique tracks in its full runtime. But what an awesome debut record. I do actually prefer the original debut record as opposed to the re-recorded version of it that the band put out, I think, like early last year. Top three tracks: Speech Impediment, Shot Below the Belt, and Too Late for Roses. At number 5 is Found in Faraway Places. This is a record that I think maybe suffers a little bit from context more than anything, because I will have very positive things to say about the record before and the one after this one. That being said, it still has some of their boldest experimentation to date, which is why it's above some of these other records. You guys will see, like, stay tuned towards the end of the video where I'm going to score all these records and do a tier list. Like, these upper, like, 6 records are all really close together in their scores. So it was especially hard to rank them. But like I said, I do really admire just the experimentation that's exhibited on this record. Like, the track Identity is so, like, flamboyant. That's still a track that I think sticks out in the band's catalog. I love the track Ghost. When the band incorporates clean vocals oftentimes through guest features, but not always, I usually think that it works pretty well, and this is a great instance of that from Jeremy McKinnon of A Day to Remember. It almost gives the track like a slight post-hardcore type of flair to it. Also, the following track, Majoring in the Minors, which is a phenomenal title. I love that title. Even that track, still, like, in its energy and its mood, has like a slight post-hardcore influence that I think really works in the band's sound. Everlasting Ending is just one of those like sugary, nostalgic 2000s metalcore type of songs. And its melodies, it reminds me a lot of Killswitch Engage's Reject Yourself, but obviously it's a lot heavier and more experimental. The song Blackwood has a sick, clean guitar intro, and the overall mood that it exhibits is carried over really well into the rest of the song. Separating the Seas is another really cool track on here that has like that dark circus type of bridge. Reminds me a lot of Between the Buried to me. Also, going back to Majoring in the Minors, that bluegrass part in the bridge totally reminded me of BT Band's song Ants of the Sky. So there's a lot of really cool, like, diverse experimentation on this record that I think is great. I think one thing that might weigh it down slightly is I do think the band, from a structural standpoint, might overuse some of those melodic bridge sections on the record, because when every song, or almost every song, feels like it has a part like that, it gets to be a little bit predictable. But another phenomenal record. Top 3 tracks I'll give to Ghost, Majoring in the Minors, and Vanguard. Next up at number 4 is Constellations, a very beloved album in the August Burns Red fan base. And for being their third record, I definitely think it feels a lot more expansive sonically and emotionally than the first 2 records do. Much like Messengers, it takes a little bit less from the prog influence in favor of more just straight up, fitting of the time, metalcore influence. But it really excels in that role. Like the opener 30 and 7, great instances of that, just really packed with emotion despite being so heavy. Ocean of Apathy has that really good march, and maybe one of the first instances of the band pulling off so well one of those clean guitar breaks in the bridge. The emotion gets amped up even more on tracks like Whitewashed and Mariana's Trench that have some really well executed quiet parts. An absolutely thrilling track from this record is Indonesia, which actually features Tommy Rogers from Between the Buried and Me. The song Rationalist is like this really groovy, straight ahead, somewhat short song that I think functions really well in that role. And I love the track Meridian. This is a song that is very, very unique, and I think more bands should do songs like this because it borders on being an instrumental, but it still has some vocals and some lyrics, so it still at least feels like a song that I could add to my playlist. It happens so often when I'm doing a review or a ranking where I listen to an album and it's got an instrumental track on here, and I think that would have been so cool as a proper full track with vocals. And I love that I was able to get that with this song. But yeah, great, beloved, expansive record this time. Top 3 tracks will give to Meridian, Ocean of Apathy, and Indonesia. At the number 3 spot, I'm going to give it to the band's most recent album, Death Below. Probably a lot higher than many of the band's fans would place it, but I fucking love this record. I thought it was a phenomenal modern execution of their sound. The thing that really does it for me with this record is I feel like it has a lot of personality, most notably due to that pretty prominent, like, Western exotic flair that exhibits itself in several of the tracks. I listened to tracks on here like that opening intro guitar lick on Tightrope, or the chorus of Ancestry, also Backfire, and like I can't tell if I'm envisioning being in like the Nevada desert or somewhere in like Brazil. Just very like sunny, dry melodies in these songs that I think just work really well, and they make the album feel like a little bit unique compared to other records from the band, which is especially saying something considering that this is up until this point, up until a couple days, is the band's newest album. The 2 interlude type tracks, for one, Premonition. It has some cool melodies, but I don't know. I wasn't really a fan of the kind of spoken word, slam poetry type of vocal on this song. And then later on, the track Savink. It's okay, but I feel like the song didn't really need to be its own track. I feel like these melodies could have worked as the intro to another one of these tracks. But aside from that, this is a very bold record that feels, again, unique compared to others. I mean, the proper opening track on here, The Cleansing. When else has the band started off one of the records with a 7+ minute song that actually works the entire time? It opens with the blast beats, and it's got a lot of like melancholic, dreary melodies that reappear throughout. Another really unique song for the band is the track Fool's Gold in the Bear Trap, which up until like the last like minute and 20 seconds is full on melodic the entire time. Revival feels like a modern rendition of like a Lamb of God style groove metal to me in its riffs. The track The Abyss has a really fitting, eerie vibe to it. There's some really great melodic moments on here, especially like that chorus in Ancestry, which, I mean, I might be a little biased because Jesse Leach is on this song, but I just think his voice and his vocal parts work so well with the exotic vibe that reappears throughout the song. Yeah, overall, another great record, which is a lot considering how new this record is. And it was the band's ninth album, if you count the Christmas album. Top 3 tracks I'll give to Backfire, Tightrope, and Ancestry. Number 2 is Phantom Anthem, one of the band's proggiest albums, which is why it's so high up. But even aside from that, I mean, the opener, King of Sorrow, has that stomping opening triplet riff. And even those more melodic parts in the song, they might not take as much from prog as they do from just a straight up diverse melodic metalcore song, but it really works. The Frost is a really unique song on here. It's one of those tracks that, and I love tracks like this, that have like an upbeat nature to them with like a sinister backdrop. It's a really interesting song. It gives almost like that uncanny valley type of vibe. I love songs like this. The prog really comes in on the track Invisible Enemy. You hear it right away with almost like that tech death leaning intro riff. Coordinates is great. It has like that barren, twangy, clean guitar part, and the melodic parts do a really good job on this song of kind of weaving in and out throughout, and they make the song a lot less structurally predictable. Carbon Copy has some really good melodies too, and the track Dangerous is an all-time favorite song, period, for me from this band. I fucking love that opening groove with that like squealing guitar melody happening over it, and it's got some really cool melodic moments in the song too. Lifeline is a really sugary but memorable melodic track on here as well. The only thing I would say about this record is that I think some of the songs maybe could have been condensed slightly. The majority of the tracks on here breach the 5-minute mark, and I just feel like it might have made the album a little bit more easily repeatable and re-listenable if the tracks maybe were, around the 3.5, 4-minute mark. And I think they would have been just as impactful. But another phenomenal record. Top 3 tracks I'm going to give to Dangerous, Invisible Enemy, and Coordinates. And that means my pick for the best August Burns Red album goes to Rescue and Restore. This is actually a relatively easy pick for number 1, I think just because of the emotion on this album. This actually is a really emotive album despite how heavy it is. And not only that, but stylistically, it brings like all of the best influences from all of the band's previous records up to that point. It brings back some of the prog. It has that nostalgic 2000s metalcore vibe. It's super dynamic. It's a record that keeps your attention the entire time with its winding song structures, its unpredictable melodies, a lot of like unconventional groove choices, and again, just the emotion. The only reason I'm not giving this album a perfect score is because I think a couple of tracks near the end of the record do blend together slightly. For me, it's Animals, Echoes, and to some degree, The First Step. But even those 3 tracks I like. And aside from the fact that they blend together a little bit for me, this record's pretty much a masterpiece. Favorite track on the record, hands down, is Creative Captivity, and maybe my favorite track, period, from the band. It's another one of those songs where it kind of treads the line slightly between being an instrumental and not being an instrumental, just because I feel like even if you took the vocals out, this still would be like one of the most memorable tracks on the record, which is not something I normally say. It has a really soulful intro with those keys and also a really cool melodic bridge section, one of the best the band has done. The opener, Provision, also Spirit Breaker and Fault Line are great instances of the band really cranking up the emotion on this record. Count It All As Lost does that too, but in a much darker manner. This is maybe one of the darkest songs the band has ever recorded. And you also have a track like Sincerity, which really brings that meanness to kind of counterbalance some of the more melodic, emotional stuff on here. Yeah, this is just a very expansive, dynamic, and emotional listen. And for me, it is their best album. Top 3 tracks, Creative Captivity, Spirit Breaker, and Beauty and Tragedy. And that's all I have for this album ranking for August Burns Red. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to comment below how you would rank their album. And make sure to stay tuned and hit the subscribe button because I will be reviewing Season of Surrender after it drops. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.